Ryan is a lean startup coach. You already know a lot about the concept of lean startup. And he's a consultant with a leadership experience in product marketing, agile product marketing, and business development at several tech startups in New York and San Francisco. He's a founder of LeanStudio, and prior to that, he led marketing efforts at companies Advisor and Lean Startup Machine. Um, Ryan will be telling you more about lean startup and cost reduction programs today. And please feel free to ask him questions. I don't know when it's best to do it, during the presentation or at the end of it, but use this opportunity to learn everything you want to know about lean startup.
Awesome. Thank you, Marina. So we're starting a little bit late today. Is that better? Okay. We're starting a little bit late today. I want to apologize. People in California don't know how to drive in the rain, and I live in San Francisco, and it took well over an hour to get here. Would normally take about 20 minutes. So thanks for being patient. So today we're gonna kind of just do blow by blow overview of Lean Startup. What do the high level concepts mean? What does it mean though also in practical application, because that's much more important. A lot of people know about Lean Startup, have read the book, read blogs, but then don't actually know how to put it into practice. And my goal today over the next hour or so is to give you guys a more tactical, hands-on sense of how you would actually apply Lean Startup methodologies to your business. So you're not just hearing the concepts, but you'll actually see examples of how you would put this approach into action. So just a quick show of hands, who has actually read the Lean Startup? Has any? Okay, so this is relatively new material for you guys. Um, uh-oh. Is there a way to put the PDF into a slide presentation, like a slide view? Yeah. Yeah, it is a PDF. If you open, I don't, unless I convert it, which is going to take more time. If you open it, do you have Adobe Acrobat Reader? No. Okay. Because then you'd be able to do it as a slide presentation. You don't have like an HDMI connector or anything that I could just do it off my computer? Well, the only thing is then I'm gonna need a dongle to adapt to. Okay. We're gonna make it work, guys. Hopefully. So in the meantime, a little bit about my background. Um, I've been doing Lean Startup for about 4 years. Um, and right now I'm an independent consultant. I work with and I actually work with the Norwegian government as well, and a number of technology startups here in the Bay Area. And I think right there, and we should be good. And then I'll just click through as we go. I did up and talk with Singularity University a couple years ago. I did like an overview of Lean Startup for a day, and Singularity is down at Moffett Field at NASA Ames. So they're not directly affiliated, but they had a lot of NASA swag to give away. I don't know what's going on. Just looks like the something happened with the display settings that the screen turned off. Well, would you mind scrolling through just manually so that we can just go through smoothly? Because I don't want to waste any more time. Yeah, I don't know what happened to this. So aside from being a lean startup coach, I have been the head of marketing at I think 4 technology startups in New York and San Francisco, and a lot of what I do in lean startup has to do with market validation and market segmentation. I think that this might be a little bit of a different type of talk for you guys because I know that most of you are working in IT, energy, and biotech correct? And so a lot of the work that I typically do is in a more traditional B2C or B2B environment. I would assume a lot of you guys have more technical or engineering risk in your businesses, and a somewhat different path to customers. So let's do the slide that says something is fundamentally wrong. So basically, in the history of Silicon Valley, most technology companies have been built based on, someone's idea, what they thought was an amazing idea, but ultimately, uh, you know, they're building something without a lot of validation around whether they actually have a customer base or not. And so if you look at the landscape of companies that have been funded over the last 10 to 15 years, most of these companies actually have failed. So about 2% of companies after their 5-year growth period, after having an investment of capital, go on to be successful, but the vast majority fail. And so why does this happen? So why do startups fail? So so the first big idea that I want to point out is this concept that the vast majorities of startups fail not because they couldn't build a product and bring it to market, but because they had no customers. They had no one who actually had enough of a pain, and the product didn't solve enough of a market that people were actually willing to buy the product. And if you don't have customers, you don't have a scalable business model, and you're gonna fail. Make sense? So, the other piece of this is that there's a certain amount of speed that you need when you go to market as well. And if you don't adapt to changes in the market, you're also very likely to fail. So it's not enough that you understand who your target customers are and that you launch your product to market solving for those customers. You actually have to be able to adapt quickly enough to changes in the market to satisfy your customers, even if you know who they are. Um, there are a lot of different reasons that companies fail. We're not going to get into all of those reasons. But if you look at sort of like a post-mortem of the biggest reasons why technology startups have failed, it's still this big one that they don't know who their customers are. They've either ignored their customers, pivot, or move quickly enough to adapt their business model and their go-to market strategy to serve the needs of the right customer segments. So lean startup at the highest level, if you take anything away from this talk, is really about nailing who your target customer is and going to market fast enough to solve a problem in the market for those customers. What's that? Per- percentages. There are percentages, yeah. Yeah. Probably maybe 20%, 15% maybe. Oh no, you know what I remember actually? This is um this is an aggregate. It's not percentage. So this is just so of 32 startups, This number on the x-axis, or on the y-axis, I think maybe was 10. You can look at this link. I'll share the slides, and you can look at it. Okay. So, what do I mean by getting to market quickly? What do I mean by pivoting? In this quote by Clayton Christensen in The Innovator's Dilemma, he talks about how important it is to learn quickly from the market. And the vast majority of successful startups, big name startups that we hear about today in Silicon Valley, started with one business model and then back after a year or two, pivoted their business model based on what they learned in the market. So based on an initial launch that did not exactly align with the needs of their target customers, they were able to change their product to better serve their customers' needs and essentially change their business model in the process. So companies that have successfully pivoted, I don't know what that is, include YouTube, PayPal, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr. A lot of these companies started doing something completely different in their first couple years of existence prior to becoming what we know them to be today. Okay? And there are case studies that you can find online. People have analysis on how they were able to succeed. What was it that they learned from customers and from launching in the market that allowed them to change their business model, to make it better, and to pivot? So the other two big concepts that I think are important with lean startup are under the idea of reducing waste, the idea that you don't want to build the wrong thing. Okay, so yes, we want to launch to the right target customers, but that still doesn't mean that we'll launch the right product features. And we also want to avoid the idea of premature optimization. So what do we mean by this? Building the wrong thing. Too often, when we get millions of dollars of capital infused into our business, the engineering team just thinks that they can build what they want. And unfortunately, even though lean has become so popular in Silicon Valley, this is still the modus operandi for most tech startups. They build something bloated with too many features, it's too complex, that doesn't solve any of their customers' pain points, and it's a total waste. And then they have to start over from scratch, and they've wasted all of that investment of time and resources, financial and intellectual. The other piece of this idea of lean startup as a means of reducing waste is that it allows us to avoid premature optimization. So premature optimization you can think of as being around a bunch of mountain peaks, and some of them are higher than others. And we're on top of one of those peaks, and we think that we've optimized our business model and the delivery of the experience that we're creating to be the best possible experience for our customers. In reality, if we haven't done anything, and if we haven't gotten it from the market, we might be missing the fact that there's another higher peak. There's another better opportunity for us to pursue. It's because we've optimized too soon. And between these two things and people not talking to their customers enough, these three pieces are really the death knell of most companies. Okay? So if we can find a process and a way of fixing these issues, all through getting great customer feedback, then hopefully we can mitigate the risk of failure and have more success. And so these are the highest level concepts around lean startup that you want to think about. Does this make sense so far, just on high level? Okay. So the biggest part of this, though, of course, is customer development. Customer development is this idea that Steve Blank has talked about for years. He first wrote about it in a book called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany, and has since refined the idea with a couple other books since then. I don't know if he's come in and spoken with you guys, but he's really a huge thought leader in the lean startup space. He's popularized this expression, get out of the building, which basically is out of your own head. Okay, it's literal and metaphorical. Customer development is a four-stage process that begins with customer discovery and moves through uh, various iteration loops until you reach the stage that you have it and you're actually building and scaling a company. But what it's focused on is identifying the underlying problem in the market that you're solving to see that you have a solution that's viable and aligns with that problem prior to actually building anything. So we're talking to people, we're getting out of the before we build anything. We're flipping this old model on its head, right? The model where everybody built first and validated later and then optimized too soon and didn't have the right customers and failed. We're flipping that model on its head. We're doing the validation first. Okay? Nobody wants to do it though. It's scary, okay? How many of you guys actually talk to customers on a regular basis? Or how many of you talk to customers before you decided to pursue your business? Okay, never. That's not good. So, so this is really what you have to start thinking about. It's scary to talk to customers, right? Because you have this idea that you've been thinking about maybe for years, and you have a chip on your shoulder. What I mean by that, chip on your shoulder is expression in English that means basically you're obsessed with something that aggravated you or frustrated you a long time ago, and then you just can't think about doing anything but fixing that problem. And so we come up with an idea that we think is the best solution to fix that problem, and we build it before we validate whether anybody else cares or not, right? So this is kind of the traditional four-step process. I'm going to try to move through some of these slides a little bit more quickly in the interest of time. But customer discovery, customer validation, company creation, and company building are the four building blocks that Steve Blank outlined. I'm going to talk a lot about customer discovery and customer validation through the rest of the presentation. Okay. At this stage, in the first two iteration loops, we're searching for a viable business model. Once we have validated that there's a real problem in the market and that the solution we've proposed resonates in the market, then and only then would we move forward to the company building stage where we're actually executing on building a business model. But lean startup is really principally concerned with these first two. Okay, validated learning, build, measure, learn. Who's heard of build, measure, learn? This is another kind of lean startup concept. The idea here is that if we always start by learning first prior to building something, and as long as we have tools and processes in place that allow us to measure whether what we've built is successful, then we have a really nice, discrete, and tight feedback loop that allows us to make more informed decisions. If we do this, then a number or percentage of customers will exhibit desired behavior. This is an example of a falsifiable test, or the kind of test that a scientist would use when running an experiment. And this is the kind of thinking that we bring into the build, measure, learn feedback loop. That we're running experiments that are data-driven, that are quantitative, based on something that we've built, so that we can get feedback from customers to see if it's actually working or not. Is it solving a problem? Is it accomplishing one of their needs or goals? Okay. So we start with customer discovery. Keep going. Scroll down. Hold on. Let's just skip ahead. You can scroll down. Little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more. So there's another concept here, product market fit. This is just one definition. I'm going to share all these slides with you, so if we don't get through all of them, you guys can read through them later. But product market fit is the idea that we have enough customer validation from getting this feedback, feedback from the experiments we run with customers, to say that we can actually the business model in a sustainable way economically based on the revenue that we're generating from our customers. And this is the time that we can actually invest in scaling our sales and marketing effort, which is the most expensive inflection point in the life of any company. If you don't have product market fit, then you really have no inherent engine of growth. You really have no way of sales and marketing efforts based on customer revenue. So there is no scalable way of growing your business. This is an absolutely essential concept. If you're taking notes, I would write a star next to this concept. Learn as much as you can about the idea of product market fit, because companies that have product market fit are much more likely to go on and be successful. It doesn't mean they'll definitely be successful. Plenty of companies have product market fit. They have a great product. Customers love it. They start scaling their engine of growth. Sales and marketing starts to grow, but they still fail for other reasons. There's still other big risks that could cause a company to fail. But if you can cross this hurdle, you're in a good place. There's another kind of definition that people use for product market fit in the kind of growth hacker community. You guys have heard of the growth hacker community? Growth hacking. It's a very popular term in Silicon Valley right now. Basically, Sean Ellis, who's been the head of marketing at a ton of successful companies like Eventbrite and a few others, found that if 40% of surveyed customers in your business said that they couldn't live without your product, in other words, they'd be extremely disappointed if they could no longer use your product. If 40% of your customers said that, then that was the benchmark for product market fit. So it's just an interesting metric to think about. This is a survey metric that he came up with. You can learn more about this if you just search for Sean Ellis on Google. I'm going to skip ahead. Okay. I love this picture. It's great. So, are you guys familiar with the term pivot? This is another core concept in Lean Startup. Raise your hand. Anyone? Okay. This has become such a dirty word. Really dirty word. No one really knows what it means. It's used in a wrong way a lot by journalists and the media when they write about Lean Startup and they write about pivoted. They never really understand how to use the term the right way. But basically, for the purposes of this discussion, we really need to understand at this stage, the customer discovery stage, where you haven't built a product yet, the only kind of pivot you're going to go through is a customer segment pivot. So identifying one customer segment that you think you're building your product for, discovering actually there's no validation with that segment. They're not interested in my solution. So we need to pivot our focus on a different customer segment. That's basically the easiest way of thinking of what a pivot means. There are other types of pivots as well, but we're not going to get into that. But it's a change in execution or a change in strategy that maintains your vision but keeps one foot. So we have a solution in mind, but we need to find a different customer segment. Okay, and of course, Lean, if you do it right, the idea is that you're going to move a lot faster, you're going to adapt more quickly to changes in the market, and you're mitigating not taking advantage of a market opportunity as fast. Okay. So the next part of customer development is customer validation. So after we say, okay, we've talked to 100 people in our target market, and a significant enough percentage of them actually have this pain point that we're solving for, then we want to start testing to see if people would actually pay for the thing, right? So we have to start running experiments to validate that people are willing to pay us money, some form of currency, to validate that we have a scalable business. Okay? Skip ahead. So currency is not just money. Currency means time, attention, and money, because those are three scarce resources, right? So if we run an experiment with early evangelists of our products, and we aren't necessarily collecting money from them yet, we can also validate that they're interested in our product by asking them to fill out a long form on a landing page, or asking them to sit down with us and do a usability test to see if they're excited about the product. There are a lot of different ways that you can validate that your target customer is really interested and would probably use your product, that don't just entail asking them to pay you money. And if we have time, I'm going to show you some really cool examples of how that works. Either way, like I said, I'll send you guys a slide deck and you'll see those examples of how companies actually run experiments to test whether they can get money or, yes. I have about until 10:30. So I think I'm going to try my best to get through the whole thing. Okay. And so if, say, we move to the customer validation stage and we don't have traction and we don't see that signal meaning, we have people who are really foaming at the mouth to buy the product that we've proposed. Like, they're so excited about it that they want to give you money for it. Then we have to ask ourselves a series of questions. Okay? Have we properly identified the customer's needs and goals? If we haven't properly identified their needs and goals, then the solution that we're putting in front of them isn't going to excite them at all. Do we understand our customers? What are they currently trying to do to fix their pain points in the market? Maybe we haven't done enough observation. Are we targeting the correct customer segment? Are we effectively positioning the product with the right value proposition, the right benefits, the right features? Okay. Do we have too many features? Are we confusing people? Should we offer less features? There are a million factors that could contribute to why someone wouldn't be interested in our proposed solution. But the point is, you're not going to know the answer to any of these unless you're actually talking to your customers. So is this all starting to make sense now? Talking to people is the answer. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead. Okay, so customer discovery is an interaction with early adopters focused on the problem to understand past behavior and urgency. Talk to people. So how do we actually do this? So here's where, I don't just want to talk about high-level theory of Lean Startup. I want you guys to actually have some takeaways, so there's a process that you can go through starting today, starting tomorrow, to actually. So the first thing that you want to do anytime you're getting ready to get out of to target customers is have a clearly defined plan, clearly define what your learning objectives are, okay, and really have a clear sense of what this process is going to look like. Because if it's haphazard and you schedule interviews with customers and you don't have a clear plan in place, you don't know what questions you're going to ask them, and you don't know which risky assumptions in your business need to be tested, then it doesn't matter that you're getting out of the building. You're just going to sort of be confused, and the data you collect isn't going to be meaningful. Okay, so the first thing that you always want to do is prioritize the riskiest assumptions in your business. What do I mean by a risky assumption? So a risky assumption, you can sort of think in terms of this matrix. Risk is something that you can calculate. There are a lot of different mathematical equations that people use with risk that take into account risk probability, regardless of what industry you're in. It's pretty simple, though, in this context, just to think of a risky assumption as something that, if proven untrue, would have a high impact on your business, and a negative impact, that is. and we don't know for certain whether it's true or not. So it's a variable about our business model that is highly unknown, meaning we don't have a lot of data about it yet, so we don't know whether it's true or not yet. And it's something that would have a very high negative impact on our business if it were not true. Okay. Why is always more important than what? So we're going to talk about collecting data. A lot of it is quantitative, and that's great. Analytics can tell you what someone did. Go into Google Analytics, look at page views, look at, how somebody discovered your business online. That tells you what? It doesn't tell you why. And if someone is using your product and then they bounce or they disappear, we want to know why they left. We can't just look at analytics and surveys and quantitative data and know why someone felt the way they did. We need to talk to them to understand why. Okay, so targeted conversations with humans, always better than online surveys, analytics, or market research. Just some more examples. Qualitative is always open-ended, right? You have a conversation with customers, you can dig down, you can ask why, you can ask how, you can understand why people actually enjoy things, what do they not enjoy. If we only do quantitative testing, we know what, but it's close-ended. We can't pursue a line of inquiry, we can't follow our nose and ask the tough questions that'll help us really figure out how we can improve our business model. Okay, so this is the kind of process that I would advocate. This is the process that you would want to go through. So before we want to have clear learning goals. Number one, who do we want to learn from? Okay, who the heck is our target customer, right? So we want to define a hypothesis around who is our target customer, what are their needs and goals, demographics, psychographics, what are the behaviors they currently exhibit that we can observe, that we can segment by. We can better deliver our value proposition to that particular segment. So number one, always, 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 who do we want to learn from? Okay, scroll. Can you scroll down? And then what do we need to validate or invalidate first? This is why it's so important to identify and prioritize the riskiest assumptions in our business model. And those assumptions are not just about they can be engineering risk. They could be, there's risk in how we reach people through particular channels. There's risk in value chains, okay? There are a lot of different pieces to business models. Have you guys worked with Alex Osterwalder at all, the business model canvas? Anyone, business model canvas? Yeah, I would recommend looking up business model canvas and looking at the different building blocks of a business model to understand that there's risk not just in identifying the right customer to launch your product to, but there's risks in many other places. And I won't get into that, but I highly recommend looking up business model canvas, which is a great visual tool for thinking about those risks. So then, how will we find the right people to interview? The other piece to this that I always encounter with people is, okay, we're finally excited to do these interviews and to talk to our customers, but how do we get in touch with them, right? Do we email them? What do we do? I think one of the best ways to run tests is to put up screener forums on like Craigslist or on a forum or even on Twitter or Facebook. Basically, you'd put up a link that says, hey, we're looking for people to participate in a user research study. Please click through and fill out the eligibility form. If you're eligible, we'll get in touch. Just keep it simple, open-ended. How do we ensure quality control throughout the process? This is another a key part of the planning process. Um, if you are asking one target group of people a particular set of questions to validate or invalidate a risky assumption, and then you ask another target group on another day a different set of questions, and you don't ask those questions the exact same way, then basically you have two completely different data sets that you'll get. And this is the idea of comparing apples to apples versus apples to oranges. You need to have controls in place when you do user research and when you do customer development. Otherwise, your qualitative data, they won't make sense. They won't be usable in the same context. Okay? So process is a really key part of doing this properly as well. And then how do we draw conclusions based on our data? So the idea that after we actually get out of the building and talk to people and get all of this great qualitative data, how do we sit down as a team, as founders, in a really transparent and communicative way? And how do we then draw conclusions, informed conclusions, that allow us to decide, do we continue to pursue this idea or do we pivot the idea to something else that we think could be better? And that's very important, because half the battle in a startup sometimes is just agreeing with your team or with your co-founder on how to proceed forward. And if you don't have a good process in place, and if you don't have good transparency and communication around the data that you've collected in your interviews, then it's sort of irrelevant, isn't it? Then you're not going to know what to do with that data. You're not going to know how to form proper conclusions. So you need to really have clear goals around all of these bullet points. I'm going to skip ahead in the interest of time. I do want to just give sort of an example. So let's say we're at the very early stages of our business. Actually, let me ask you guys a question so I understand what stage you're at. Have you guys actually started to build, raise your hand, has anyone actually started to build your business yet? Or are you guys sort of more at the idea stage? You guys are actually building the business, okay? Okay. And maybe some people are still at the validation stage, still kind of working on a hypothesis or what? Okay, okay, cool. So this will be more relevant to some of you than to others. But let's say, you know, idea to build a wearable hands-free camera that allows people to capture high-quality video effortlessly and spontaneously. This is a real example from one of my clients. So number one, who are they? So who are the people that would use this type of solution? The first thing you would do is come up with all the possible use cases. So like, who would actually be interested in using a wearable hands-free video camera every day? Yeah, you think security, police, maybe athletes so that they can analyze their technique afterwards. Millennials. Do you guys know what I mean by millennial? It's like people who are like in their late teens and early 20s who grew up with the internet and Facebook. You know, people who take selfies, right? Interested in recording their daily lives. Parents with young children, search and rescue teams, even dogs and cats. Some people put GoPro cameras, you know GoPro? They put them on their dogs and let them explore, and it's kind of cool. So these are all possible use cases, right? So scroll down. So with my clients, the first use case that we decided to test that we felt would be the most viable opportunity in the market was parents with young children. And this was for a number of reasons. Our hypothesis was that parents who have young children who want to interact with their children with both of their hands would like to have something wearable that can record special moments like their child's first steps or the first time they say mommy or daddy or something. If you're interacting with your child with one hand and trying to turn on your iPhone camera with the other hand, you might miss that moment, or you might fumble it, or it might just be frustrating because you can't actually live in that moment with your child. So this is why we went with that use case. So number one, we're answering, who are they? Our number one goal now is to validate that this product, this wearable hands-free camera, is actually solving a problem for parents with young children. But not only that, not only are we identifying a possible customer segment around that use case, we have to be engaging with what we call early adopters. Are you guys familiar with the term early adopter or early evangelist? This is a very important term. So this is right up there with you guys, for homework, reading about the concept of product market fit, which is also super important. This one, really understanding what it means to work with an early adopter. This is someone in your target customer segment who not only has the problem that you're solving for, but they know that they have the problem. They're going to tell you they have the problem, okay? When you're talking about your solution, their eyes are going to be coming out of their head, and smoke is going to be coming out of their ears. You want to look for that signal. That means, okay, wow, this might actually be worth building for this segment. Excuse me. If you're really lucky, you'll find early adopters who have previously searched for a solution. They're so frustrated. So in other words, these parents with young children have been looking for months for a wearable hands-free camera that is specifically designed for their use case. Pardon me. If you're even luckier, you'll find people that have tried to hack together their own solution. And maybe that's somebody, literally that could mean that somebody took their iPhone camera and put it on a necklace and wore it around their neck. Like a mother with her 2-year-old daughter was doing this with the video recording. Okay, makes sense? So that's what I mean by a hack. And then finally, the final criterion is that they have to have budget. They have to be willing to take out their wallet and pay you for this solution. So you might have someone who has the problem and he or she is aware that they have the problem, but if you were to build this product and it costs $1,000 and this particular demographic or this target customer segment couldn't afford to spend $1,000, then you have a problem. Okay, then you would need to pivot the solution. Anyway, early adopters, if you want to think of it visually, you have your total addressable market. So all of those use cases that were listed out, security officers, okay, search and rescue, they're all parts of that total addressable market. But with Lean Startup, we want to start with one target customer segment, and we want to find the early adopters in that target customer segment. We want to begin testing the solution with them first. So we start small, we start very niche. This is a great graphic, I think, a great graphical representation of what I'm describing. Jeffrey Moore, in his book Crossing the Chasm, popularized this idea of the technology adoption curve. Is anyone familiar with this concept, technology adoption curve? This is a great way of thinking about your market opportunity. So on the far left, you have who are people who are we all know somebody like this who runs out to the store to buy every new gadget that comes out. When Apple announces that they're launching something, that's the first person in line. They're going to buy it even if it's crap, okay? They just need to have that latest gadget. Early adopters are similar to innovators. They're not really, they're just as open to risk and comfortable with risk as, but these are people who really are looking for something more specific, so they're a little bit more discriminating about the types of products that they'll buy. The products that they buy have to really solve a pain point that they're experiencing. So the product is doing a job for them that they haven't been able to find previously. And that's the area that we're playing in with Lean Startup. The chasm, what we mean by that is that between early adopters and the early majority, or like in this area, like the mass market consumer, okay, the iPhone user, the Mac user, there's this big question of how we go from working with early adopters to going to mass market with a product that may or may not have product market fit. Okay, so to cross the chasm as a prerequisite, you have to have product market fit. Otherwise, your product, your solution, will never appeal to consumers at large. Okay, this is less relevant, I think, for most of you because you're doing, like B2B and IT energy, biotech. Pardon me. But it's a good concept to think about nonetheless. Okay, so we start with early adopters, always. Okay, we're not going to do the exercise if we had time. Okay, so how do we outline our risky assumptions? So let's say we're actually going to go through the exercise. We're going to identify all of the riskiest assumptions about our business model. What are the questions we need to ask ourselves as we do this? Okay, our target customer is, describe the current customer hypothesis in one sentence. So literally, write this down in your notebook or write this. Who is our target customer? That's a risky assumption. What problem are we solving for? Okay, the customer's needs can be solved with, basically that's you coming up with your solution hypothesis. That's very risky, that needs to be tested. Why can't the customer solve this problem today in the market? So what's missing in the market? Or what obstacles, what barriers are in place to help them actually find a solution that they are foaming at the mouth for? Okay. And then what outcome, what are the customer's goals and needs? What outcome do they hope to achieve? Okay. Very risky assumption. What's our primary channel for customer acquisition? So there's channel risk in any business, right? Maybe you know who your target customer is and you've nailed your solution, but if you don't have channels to reach those customers, you're kind of screwed, right? So that's another very risky assumption that needs to be tested. Who's our early adopter? So it's not just enough to know who that target customer is. We need to find that early adopter. The early adopter is the one who's really experiencing the pain point. They're going to give us the best feedback on the early version of our product. Okay, what's our revenue model? Very risky. Okay, a lot of companies that have product market fit and cross that chasm and launch their product to the mass market, they screw up their revenue model. They don't price their product correctly. Maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low. Maybe they should have done a subscription model instead of a fee-based model. Okay, there are lots of risks that come into play after we have customer validation. We still need to define them at the beginning so that we have a vision, a kind of foresight for the risks that we'll need to test later. Okay, make sense? Okay, who are our primary competitors? I see this all the time. I see teams understand lean startup concepts and are excited to get out and talk to people and completely miss the fact that there's already a competitor with $20 million of venture capital financing 3 doors away in San Francisco doing the same exact thing that they're doing. Sometimes we get so excited about our idea that we don't even want to acknowledge that somebody else has already thought of the idea and succeeded or failed. We just didn't do the research. So there's a big risk in not knowing who our competitors are and not doing competitive intelligence to learn what did our competition do well, what did they not do well, and how can we take those learnings and incorporate them into our own products so we can make something better. And how are we going to beat the competition? What features will we include that will make our product better? How will we better define our value proposition to more effectively solve those pain points for customers? Okay, what's the biggest risk to financial viability? I mean, there are a lot of different factors in this. What could prevent us from breaking even? What if we don't pay our tax? Whoops. I mean, there are so many risks in any business. And then, of course, technical or engineering risk. I would assume this is a big one for you guys with the types of business models that you're pursuing. That there's more of an engineering risk, more of a research and development risk as well. Engineering, R&D, okay, and many other assumptions. So we take all of the assumptions and we want to visualize where do they fall on this matrix that we looked at. So if we had done the exercise, it would have given you guys 10 minutes just sort of on your tabletop with stickies to move all of these different assumptions around so that we identify, what falls in that upper right quadrant. What are the riskiest assumptions that we should be testing first? Okay? Because if we were to discover that those assumptions were invalid, those assumptions were untrue, then there would be serious harm to our business model. And that would be a big signal that we need to redefine the assumption or pivot our strategy to mitigate the risk of it having that harm in our business. Okay? This is why Lean Startup is driven. Okay? We're taking away, so we're not completely taking away gut feeling and instinct from making these decisions, but we're making it easier to assess risk and to prioritize how we test these assumptions with market feedback. Okay? Any questions about this, by the way? I'm throwing a lot of information at you guys, but is it making sense for the most part from a process perspective? Yeah. If you if you identified that it would be easy to reach your target customers by doing, because you know that one of your target customers' behaviors is that they're often at home or they often are on the phone, or if it was somebody who watched TV a lot and you wanted to do television advertising, the idea is that you're aligning the channel, the delivery mechanism, with an actual behavior that your target customer exhibits. If your target customer is someone who doesn't like to answer the phone, well, you sure wouldn't want to invest any money in telemarketing, right? Now, I think what you're really asking is whether telemarketing is a viable customer acquisition strategy for a startup. And I think that that's more questionable because I think that telemarketing can be expensive. I'm not actually sure what the economics of telemarketing are. I would assume it's expensive because it requires a lot of human capital. But then there are call centers. There are services that have emerged that are much cheaper. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question, but it is a channel, and I think it's worth experimenting with that channel to see if it's economically viable. No, yeah, probably not. No. Um, we're really talking about technology startups where the scale that you're going for is orders of technology scale to be orders of magnitude higher than a business that's producing like a physical object, like a set of knives, right? Their risk is really much more straightforward. They need their to exceed their costs. Um, and that's a straightforward process. That's a services or delivery kind of business model. With technology companies, there's a lot more risk early on in the investment of whether we can build this thing that then will become ultra scalable later. And I mean, most entrepreneurs wouldn't even be interested in building these types of businesses unless there was going to be a huge exit later, right? Now, you can create the type of business running infomercials for a set of knives, but that's not the same. It's just sort of not in the same spirit. I think that those are startups, but they probably don't see themselves as startups the way technology startup entrepreneurs see themselves as startup entrepreneurs. I hope that answers your question. Okay, sort of. I, if you that's a very good question. Um, I mean, there's a driven answer to that question. That's a human psychology question. If you're pitching your product and you have quantitative data around customer acquisition, or you're presenting metrics potential investor doesn't believe, that investor is probably just being, well, I can't use a bad word, but they're probably just being intentionally cynical to push your buttons. Yeah. And you'll encounter people like that. I don't mind calling out somebody I know. In New York, Dave Tisch is well known for doing this. David Tisch is from the Tisch family, which is one of the wealthiest families in New York, and he's been a big player in helping the New York startup ecosystem blossom over the last 10 years. But if you pitch to Dave Tisch, he'll cut you off mid-sentence and say something like, "Oh yeah, prove it." And you're standing there in front of your slides, and you're like, but it's right there. And I'll say, "Okay, prove it. Tell me, what did you do to actually collect that data? Did you talk to people? How do you know that they're going to like the product so much if you didn't talk to somebody?" So he's going to call you on your shit, basically. And you know what? Even though some investors can really put people on the spot and do that, they're probably good investors if they ask questions like that. The kind of investor that you would want to have. Okay. Make sense? Okay. So, all right. So we've now all of these risky assumptions. Maybe we have 20 risky assumptions in our business, and we've mapped them on this matrix to identify which of these assumptions, if proven untrue, would have the worst impact on our business, and how unknown are these variables? Like, how much more research do we need to do to prove that? So then we would take the risky assumptions that are in the upper right quadrant, and only those assumptions, and remap them again on another 2x2 matrix as a function of cost and urgency. So how quickly do we need to prove that this thing is true or untrue? And how costly is it going to be to run an experiment or to get market feedback to prove that it's true or untrue? Cost here is not just financial cost, it's also your personal time, okay? Your investment of time and resources, so it's really opportunity costs. An urgency you can think of as a function of, maybe we have a close competitor who's racing to launch their product. Maybe we have an urgent deadline to put out a proof of concept with a potential partner, okay? So urgency is a function more of time. And so then, after we've gone through these two exercises and we have another set of risky assumptions in this upper right quadrant, these are the things that we would test first. So those are the variables that we would test first using customer development, okay? B2B customer discovery, I wanted to add some slides. This is from a different presentation. I pushed them in here. I wanted to add these because Marina told me you guys were more B2B. B2C customer discovery is easier. You can kind of just go out and find people. I mean, you could go to a shopping mall and target people to talk to and ask them questions to validate your assumptions. B2B is different. If you are a business that requires a major distribution channel and you need to partner with a big Fortune 500 company in order to have that distribution, then you might only have 3 or 4 meetings in order to be able to achieve having. And if you don't nail those meetings, and if you don't ask questions and have the right proof of concept, you might just be dead in the water. Okay, there's a huge amount of risk there. So it's a tougher process. It requires a lot of tenacity to do B2B customer discovery. But because of tools like LinkedIn and big industry conferences, and just being in Silicon Valley and the value that it provides, being in the center of an innovation ecosystem like Silicon Valley, there are ways that you can do B2B customer discovery effectively. Okay, but there's a lot more research that goes into a lot of research about the company's history, understanding who is the decision maker that you're going to talk to. I'm not going to go over all of this because you guys can read through these later, but it is a little bit different from B2C customer discovery. Okay, who is our strategic point of entry? Who is going to champion our business inside of their business? Okay, you guys can read this later. Okay, segmentation, key concept, very, very important. So I've been throwing around this term, target customer segment, market segment. What the heck am I talking about? So segmentation is a really essential concept. It's something, if you have time, buy a book on market segmentation. Really learn about segmentation. This is this is what we call a customer persona. Customer personas are tools that user experience designers and lean startup folks like me use to help teams better understand who they're actually targeting with their product. What is the specific, hyper-specific niche target customer that we're defining? This particular model, this 2x2 model, was developed by a design firm called Cooper Design. Alan Cooper is the founder of Cooper Design. He came up with this model. Famous guy, look him up. And then one of my close mentors, Janice Frazier, is the founder of Luxor and is now at Pivotal Labs in the city. She refined this model further. So this is kind of a visual artifact or a visual tool that you can use as a team. I highly recommend you do this. You could do it in 10 minutes today. You literally draw like a stick figure drawing of who your customer is and, kind of think of like what's going through their head when they can't figure out how to solve this problem that they have. What are they telling themselves? What are their behaviors that we could observe? What are their core demographics, or what are the core facts about this particular segment? And then what are their needs and goals? How do their needs and goals align to the pain points that they have? There are a couple different ways that you can structure these. I actually like to put pain points in the upper right, and then I put observable behaviors and demographics in the bottom left. But basically, what you have then is a discrete visual artifact that you can put up on the wall next to your co-founder or your team. And whenever anybody is like, wait, who is our target customer again? You just point at it, right? And as you get out of the building and get feedback from people on your solution, you can tweak this. You can iterate this document. But the idea is that we have a very hyper-specific niche way of capturing who our target customer segment is. And you might have multiple customer segments. Maybe you need 3 of these. Maybe you need 5. What is a segment? Jeffrey Moore defines a market segment as a set of actual or potential customers for a given or services, okay, so for your solution that you're thinking of building, who have a common set of needs or wants or goals, and who reference each other when making a buying decision. Okay, that last one sometimes confuses people. So let's say that you're launching a product for hospitals, and the actual end user who's going to use this software product is a doctor, an MD. So let's say that the nurse practitioners or the nurses in the hospital are also going to use the software, but they don't exactly have the same set of needs, or they're very similar. Superficially, they might look like they're the same customer segment as the doctors. However, if you were talking to the nurses or talking to the doctors and they only referenced each other when talking about this pain point, then that's actually another differentiator. You would actually want to define 2 separate market segments for nurses and another market segment for doctors, because they're referencing each other when describing their pain points. Okay? So, I can't emphasize enough, the smaller and more specific the definition of your segment is, the easier it's going to be for you to get out of the building, to find them, to talk to them, to effectively launch the first version of your product to a very specific group of people. Okay? Just some questions to think about. Some of these like observable behaviors that we could define in a customer persona. What's their compelling reason to buy? How much budget authority do they have? Who do they listen to? So like, what are they reading? What papers do they read? What shows do they watch? Where do they congregate in the real world? What are their product requirements? What's the method of finding and reaching them? So these are all things that we want to ask ourselves as we're defining that very specific market segment. A segment will have all of these in common. All of them. Okay. And so why do we need to worry about this? What's the point? Well, so the persona is a great visual communication tool to use with your team so that you have transparency and communication around why it's important that we target a very specific segment. But it also helps to promote empathy with a particular market segment. It's easy to revise over time because it's visual. And the other thing is, it's not dogmatic. It's not meant to be 100%. There's no way that we can perfectly capture who our target customer is. This is a dynamic process that changes over time. We get out of the building so that we can iterate and refine who that target segment is. We can't just magically capture 100% with 100% perfection what goals are and their observable behaviors. We have to get out and actually figure that out ourselves. Excuse me. Okay, so I have this whole other section on channel experiments. So like, how do we do lean startup in the real world? Putting it into action. I'm just gonna fly through these because I don't have that much more time. But basically, so you've all heard of what an MVP is, minimum viable product, right? Sorry, I'm trying not to choke on myself. The whole point of building a minimum viable product, or basically an early version of our product that has the minimum number of features required to get viable feedback from customers. The whole point of doing this is so that we can validate whether our value proposition is resonating and whether we can get currency from people based on that minimum set of features. Remember back to that graphic, customer discovery, customer validation. What we're actually doing in conjunction with talking to people is building something very minimal that emulates the user experience. And it might not actually have any kind of back-end programmatic functionality at all. It's an experiment. I think people get confused with what MVP actually means because it stands for minimum viable product, and we hear product and it's a misnomer. It's confusing, it's misleading, because we think that it actually has to be a full-fledged product. And that's not true, as you'll see. So I tell people to think of it as just an MVE, a minimum viable experiment. What is the lowest hanging fruit? What is the minimum amount of effort that you have to do so that you can get viable feedback from someone, whether it's in a conversation, in a customer interview, or whether it's in a pitch, or whether it's in a landing page, or whether it's in a sort of manual delivery of a service that emulates what your final experience will be like. There are a lot of different experiments that you can run to get viable feedback on whether someone would actually purchase your product or not, which don't require actually building the full-fledged product. So that's what we mean by minimum viable product. But I think it should really be called minimum viable experiment. Okay. So I'm just going to skip ahead. So the first thing that we want to do is define a hypothesis. We believe that busy mothers with young children become frustrated when they are unable to record special and spontaneous moments on video. Then we make a prediction. Okay, so this is scientific method coming into how we create our MVP. We have to make a falsifiable test. Remember this graphic, build, measure, learn. So we would say, if we interview 50 mothers with young children, then 25% or more will express deep frustration. So this would be your minimum viable experiment. This is something that you would define and then do. And you're not building anything. You're just making a plan. You have your learning goal in place. You have your objectives in place. You defined already that your riskiest assumption was to validate whether the problem exists. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I have a scratch in my throat. And so then you'd get out of the building and actually test this. Sadly, most entrepreneurs do not even do this. And that is a very bad thing. So at the very least, you guys need to be doing this. Okay, you need to be defining these types of tests. You need to have a very clear picture of who your target customer is. And make it a quantitative test. Decide, after talking to 50 mothers with young children, then we're not going to pursue this segment unless at least 1/4 of them, at least 25% of them, express really deep frustration that they can't, no, I'm going back. Express really deep frustration that they can't do this. Okay? Okay. If that's successful, if we meet that success criterion, then we decide we persevere. We move forward. We'll build it. Or we'll start testing the next round of risky assumptions. If, say, only 5 or 10% of mothers express really deep frustration in those interviews, then we need to pivot. then we probably need to focus on a different use case, target customer segment. Okay? So the decision to pivot or persevere is data-driven. It's quantitative. Okay? So essentially, we want to maximize validated learning with a minimum amount of effort. Okay? And we want to lower our opportunity costs or risk. And we want to go through this process as rapidly as possible. Okay? Still with me? Okay. There are 3 main stages for MVPs: problem exploration, product pitch, and concierge. I don't think we'll have time to go through these, but when you look at this deck later, the examples will make sense. Problem exploration just means we're doing customer discovery. So this is when we're actually doing interviews. Product pitch could be pitching to investors in front of a room with a slide deck, or it could be giving somebody a demo on a Google Hangout, or it could just be having a conversation with someone and pitching your solution. Concierge is more complex. That's more where we're actually delivering an experience to people in person, and they can actually feel what the product experience will be like. So we went through all of this already. Skipping ahead. Okay. I want to show you some examples. Okay. So here's an example. An email. So what is the email testing? It's testing whether somebody is going to open this email based on the subject line. So for this one, our experiment or our falsifiable test would be if we write an email to target customers, then 20% of them will open the email based on the subject line. But there's also a split test here. You'll notice that the lines differ by 1 word. Okay? One says, purchase tickets for a 3-day lean startup competition. The other says, workshop. Okay? So not only are we so I'm adding another layer of complexity here, right? Not only are we running a test to see whether the value proposition resonates with people, but we're also doing an A/B split test to see which version of this email subject line performs better. Do you guys understand split testing? You guys do? Have you done any split testing, A/B split testing? No? It's very important. Let's say, one of these performs better than the other. Let's say that this subject line has a 30% open rate, and the other one just has a 10% open rate. Which subject line are we gonna go with when we launch a landing page, say? The one that performed better. We can assume that it'll have a higher conversion rate. Okay? Do some homework on A/B split testing, because if you're not A/B split testing these types of questions, you're not learning anything. You guys have to do split testing on these experiments. Here's another one. Let's imagine a landing page, okay? Or let's even just say this is the core value proposition on the homepage of a full website. There are tools, Unbounce, Optimizely, Visual Website Optimizer, a lot of tools that allow you to split test content to see what value proposition, what benefits, what features that we list on our product resonate better with our target customers. It's simple. Basically, you can specify that 50% of visitors to the webpage will see the top line displayed, and 50% will see the bottom line displayed. But we want to see which version of this content leads to a higher conversion. Okay, what percentage of people are going to sign up for the top one versus the bottom one? In this case, the top version was much more successful, I think, for obvious reasons. I sort of made it obvious on purpose. the value proposition is clear, isn't it? Target customer is developers. Save time and money. Remember, time, attention, money are scarce resources that we call currency with a solution. So it's very clear. It's very direct. Okay? So this performed better in a split test. It performed much better in a split test. Okay, so we'll look at some landing pages. Landing pages are a very controlled experiment. They test a single specific value proposition. That's what we were just looking at. And they allow you to split test and iterate very, very rapidly. So these are all, so now I'm bringing together all of the concepts that I've showed you, all these different concepts, and I'm going to show you some examples. Okay, so there's all kinds of channels that you can use to get people. Have you guys built any landing page experiments? Yeah. What kind of tools are you using? Are you just developing it yourself, or using like Unbounce? Yeah. Cool. You guys should check out a tool called Unbounce as well. Write that down. Unbounce. Unbounce is awesome. Yeah. You can create landing pages really quickly and test them. This is the basic layout of a landing page. You have your key benefits, you have social proof. It's usually nice to have a large graphic, and then of course you need a call to action. You need that button that they click on to see if they're going to convert. Oh. Just a few more minutes. Yeah. So this is an example of a landing page. You could create this landing page and this could just be fake. Maybe that square card reader doesn't even exist yet. Somebody made a little mold, a little plastic mold, and it's totally fake. And they make it look in the picture like it's real, but it's not real. They haven't actually built it yet. But you create this beautiful landing page. You have your value proposition. You have a form, a call to action, clear benefits, a large graphic that shows you what the user experience will feel like in your hand, tangibly, what it'll be like. And that's it. And then you can actually gauge whether people are interested in buying this product or not. Are they going to sign up? If nobody signed up for this page, you'd be in trouble. But let's say 50% of visitors to this page signed up. Whew, that is a strong signal that then you should go ahead and maybe put this into production. Okay. Now I'm oversimplifying this, but this is essentially a product pitch minimum viable product. Okay. This is an MVP. The product is not real, and I'm not holding the product, I'm not experiencing the product, but the landing page is enough. It gives me enough information that I can gauge as a consumer whether or not I would be interested in buying it. Okay, these are the types of experiments that lean startup entrepreneurs run to mitigate risk, to lower risk and opportunity costs. Say it again. Yeah. It doesn't have to be though. What are you asking exactly? No, visits, that's a vanity metric. Do you know what I mean by vanity metric? How many visits you have to a page doesn't tell you anything. You need to be measuring conversion. You need to be measuring signups. You need to be measuring engagement. If you stand in front of an investor and you say, product has 1 million users who signed up, but only 100 of them use the product every day, you're in big trouble. Okay? If you told an investor, we had 1 million visits to this landing page and a 0.01% sign up rate on this form, you're in big trouble. Okay? Okay. So the point of running these experiments and split testing and content is so that with each iteration we can improve our conversion rate. We're optimizing conversion. We're optimizing our value proposition and how we present key benefits and features. This is our minimum viable product here. Unbounce. Unbounce. Yeah, you can make great landing pages very quickly. Like you could put up a page like this in an hour and then, launch it on a regular domain, host it on a domain. You can connect email to a service like MailChimp. You can make it look very professional and start testing with people months before you plan to build anything. That's about it. That's what's really saving you money. One of the things we wanted to talk about was how to be more cost effective. Well, at the end of the day, running these types of experiments is the most cost effective approach you can take. Okay? You're completely eliminating engineering and technical risk, all of the costs of developing the actual product, by just putting the value proposition in front of people. This is another example. But I use this one because it has a longer form. When we talk about currency, we talk about time and attention as well. If you can get somebody to fill out this whole form, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 form fields, and you have a high conversion rate, that gives you a strong signal that your value proposition and features resonate with that person. Because people don't like to fill out forms. It's frustrating. I hate filling out forms. I filled out that whole form and clicked on the call to action button, chances are I've already made the mental decision that I want to buy this product. Right? Makes sense? Okay. And so a key concept, though, is the idea of productivity. So we can't just run these experiments and look for incremental improvements. That harkens back to the idea of premature optimization, right? Standing on one mountain peak but not realizing that there's a higher one on the horizon. When we run experiments and we make little changes and we see our conversion rate go up slightly, great. That's still not as significant as, say, doubling a conversion rate. That's a 100% increase in the second example. So we always want to try to make big changes. Okay? Big changes are more productive than small incremental optimization. Some other approaches, now I'm just going to skip through these. Okay, I do want to show you Concierge. Concierge is also called Wizard of Oz testing. Basically, this is where we test whether the experience itself resonates with people because they think that the product exists. I think we're out of time to talk about this, but basically an example would be like Amazon Mechanical Turk. You guys use Mechanical Turk through Amazon. Look it up. Basically, you can create the illusion of back-end functionality with something, with a tool that actually has a human being sitting at a computer somewhere, answering questions or delivering that you, on your computer, think is automated. You think it's programmatic functionality and that it was automated and that there's some sort of back end, but there's not. Someone is secretly doing this for you somewhere else in the world. That's the concept of Mechanical Turk or Wizard of Oz. When you run those types of experiments, that's called a concierge test. Okay, you're delivering on the experience and fake the customer into believing that you've built it when it hasn't been built yet. And so this is a higher opportunity cost to it. This is the last stage of MVP testing that you want to do. but it's also the most valuable. This is the most valuable kind of MVP that you can create. Me to do a couple slides on innovation accounting? Okay, got it. All right. Well, I'm sorry there was all that traffic to get here. I wanted to get to some more stuff, but I hope some of this sticks. Lean startup is not easy, guys. It's really difficult to do. And I have teams in some cases a year or more, and they still struggle with some of these concepts. But that's okay. There are bits and pieces that you take that will work for you personally, will work for your team, will work for your particular business model, and you do your best. But at the end of the day, you need to get out of the building. You need to talk to people to get feedback on your business. Make sure that you're solving a real problem, that the features you intend to build align with the pain points of your customers, and you need to do a ton of tests and go through rapid iterations of testing so that you arrive at a business model that is truly scalable and will be successful. So we'll share these slides with everyone. I'll send you the file and share them with everybody. I think we maybe got through 2/3 of the slides. All right. Well, thank you for having me.